Hi, Mike.
How's it going?
Hey, you're down at the beach.
Yep, I got a whole bunch of work to do.
Oh, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, it's good if I can get it done, but I'm a little weak, and so
Oh, really? I heard you were sick.
I ended up getting COVID when I went to Galen's estate sale.
Oh no, I wonder if anybody else did. Huh?
I don't know, but yeah, it was. I mean, I'm over quarantine and all that, but I just haven't recovered that well as far as being full of energy.
Oh, really?
I kind of get worn out pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I sent you email on the topic tonight.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. I haven't even posted anything yet.
Oh, you better, or people get all upset.
Oh, yeah. You know how it is. They can't figure it out. You got to use the same link over and over again.
Yep.
Oh, well. What's the topic, real quick, and then I'll send it out.
I'm going to do a quiz.
Oh, uh-oh.
So we're going to do a little game show quiz here. See how many.
Oh, game show. Game show by Mike, huh?
That's
Awesome.
right.
Sounds good. Yeah, when you get feeling good and get hey Dan, how you doing? When you get feeling good, let's get together. I got some projects I want you to look at, see what you think.
Okay.
A lot of wheelchair stuff and some. I've been doing a adaptive bike, hand cycling.
Oh, okay.
And I want to build this like a pipe clamp kind of thing to go on the thing, and then I have anyway, I got the idea from, they actually sell one, but it's like, $100 for this little pipe clamp and all it is a little clamp with a quick release for like air, like an air quick release
Okay. Right.
thing. So you can take it off, and anyway, it sticks out a little bit to keep the dog away from the wheel, and then you hook it on. And it's a little dog walker kind of thing. Huh. With the hand bike, I can't hold the leash and pedal the hand bike because the leash would be going all crazy. So, but I've been doing that. It's kind of fun. So I want to see if you can come up with an idea for that. I think if it's screwed on too, it'd be fine, but I don't know. It looks like it would be feasible just to make one. And I don't think it'd be nowhere near the $100 or $60 or whatever that they charge for them. So.
Most things, that's the way I feel too. And then it's usually, 20 hours and $50 in metal, and then all of a sudden you got it.
Yeah, but at least you did it yourself, right? And that's perfect, right? How you doing, Dan? What's up?
Oh, not much. I was just listening. I've seen some of these used on aircraft, pneumatic release. We have a little air system on board. I know you don't have an air system on board your chair, but but you'd be surprised. You can get a very small vacuum system or a pressure system, pressurized air. And the nice thing about pressurized air is, unlike a vacuum, you can store it. I mean, you can try storing a vacuum, but it's a little bit tough. But a pressure where all you do is replenish the plenum, you don't have to have as big a system because let's say you only assume if you're out on an hour ride or something like that, you only use it 5 times, let's say, tops. Well, you could carry enough air to do that with a pneumatic switch where you just put a little pressure coil there, and you just hit the switch and it goes and pops it. And I think that'd be cool. I mean, the best little piece of engineering I ever saw in my entire life, and this goes without saying. I've seen some pretty tricky engineering, but we had a computer that had a touch screen, and there was no way to keep the touch screen alive during testing except by touching it.
Okay.
And this one tech, well, he was a mechanical tech. He worked over in the antenna lab. He came up with this thing. It was just a bottle with a Teflon tube, and then he built a pressure well, I don't know what you call it, but some kind of piston. Yeah, it's a piston and a little sleeve that you could squeeze the bottle and it would touch the screen. And the neat thing was, it didn't have any electrical parts. It wouldn't interfere with any of the testing we're doing on the machine. All it had to do was squeeze the bottle every once in a while and make sure the machine stayed on. I think that is the best piece of engineering for simplicity, straightforward, met the requirements, didn't have to fight it. It was simplicity in itself. It was just great. But that, I thought that was
usually
great.
better.
But I've got an old radio I'm working on now.
Oh yeah, what are you working on?
Well, it's one of those back in the 30s and 40s when there were companies like Consolidated and Sentinel and a lot of these companies. Well, coast to coast hardware stores sold radios. And it was called a Music Air with an E on the end. And Sentinel made the radio. And if you go into riders, you can trace it back and you can find the right Sentinel number. And it is the right, and believe it or not, Sentinel, and a lot of these guys didn't even do this. Sentinel put the serial number, the Sentinel serial number on the frame of the radio, which is really rare. I've worked on radios that had no way of figuring out, except you had to really delve, you had to really dive deep. But this one, it's got a nice case. It's kind of reminiscent of one my dad had when I was little. That's what it's 2 bands. Goes up to 15 megs on one band, but just AM on the other. Well, it's all AM, right? But it's higher frequency AM. But somebody's been in there before me, so I've sorted through it. It's that can be a bit soul stirring. I just stopped in to say, what are you guys going to talk about tonight?
Well, I've been too busy to put anything together, so I actually came up with a quiz for everyone. So we'll do a quiz on voltage dividers and impedance.
Oh, voltage dividers.
It's a simple quiz, but it's going to kind of help instill some concepts on impedance. I think you froze, Dan.
Yeah, he's frozen, isn't he? Can you hear us, Dan? Yeah, he's probably gonna have to. Have you found any trick to do this? Oh, there you go. Yeah, he's gonna fall out. I thought that was gonna happen. So I'll send out my thing,
Okay.
make everybody happy. And then quiz night, huh?
Yep. Like I say, it's because I was too lazy to put a presentation together.
Oh, that's great. Hey, I think it's fantastic. You've been doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate you hosting this meeting too. It's great. Hopefully people are getting something out of it.
Oh, they are. I'm sure they are. I've had a lot of people that really enjoy them.
Maybe we could advertise it a little bit more to everyone, and I can actually go back through and start over again.
Oh,
All the presentations I've done, and I've been trying to add to them as other people made comments and things like that. So
that's all.
You're back, Dan.
Yeah, what happened there?
I don't know. You just kind of froze on us.
I know it, well, it's like I lost a link and I looked over at my modem and my modem's still green, so I didn't lose the internet, just something weird happened.
With Zoom, huh? Probably.
I don't know, I did, you know, I just the other night, I updated my Zoom. Those are some busy little guys over at Zoom, I'll tell you. They, it seems like about every week or every other week, there's an update to be had. That's kind of a lot of these programs, you rarely see an update on. Are you guys bringing up a big thing to the swap meet up at Shoreline next month?
Oh, we're coming up. I don't know if we're bringing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going. I'm pretty much not allowed to buy anything, so probably not a good thing to go because that would be bad.
I just don't have the space.
I don't think anybody does, Dan. That's a major problem. You have to get rid of two things to get one, right? Isn't that the way it's supposed to work?
Yeah. I think that's that seems to be a logical approach.
I ended up just buying a new 3D printer, so I've got to figure out what to do with my old one as well as get this one up and going.
Did you get a resin one?
Oh, I've already got a resin one. I've actually got two right now, but what I'm buying is a, actually I can display it here. It's the latest and greatest. It's quite amazing.
Does it, is it like a CNC machine in the fact that you can run like a mill or something with it, or is it strictly granular where they use a resin or something like that and they?
Yeah, it's purely an additive. It's kind of like the glue gun, you know, type concept, FDM printer. But this one is just so amazingly fast. I'll see if I can find a video of it here.
You do like build a shape, and then if you want to make it out of metal, you put it in a form and pour and then have it.
Exactly.
Hi, Gary.
Hey, good evening, everybody. How are you?
How are you,
Good.
Gary?
I'm having some fun listening to KPH, the maritime broadcast station down in Marin County for the Marine. They're sending out some CW tonight from their antique transmitters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, several frequencies. I'm getting it on 8642 or 8462, something like that. And it's going too fast for me to copy. It's my Morse code skills are kind of deficient, but it's kind of fun. They're celebrating the anniversary of turning off the last CW transmissions to maritime Mobile. But then a bunch of private people took over the outfit and resurrected all the old transmitters and antennas, and once a year they put it on the air and have some fun.
Is Loran still around? I've never really looked into that.
Is what still around?
Loran?
I don't think so. That was all for marine global positioning, and it's all done through satellite now, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you said Loran, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. No, I think that's all been off the air since the 70s. I mean, I remember when it was on, but you don't hear it anymore.
the government was coming up. I worked on a project called GWEN, Ground Wave Emergency Network.
Hmm.
And it was supposed to run at 140K. And it never got off the ground. We did a bunch of surveys. We did surveys on the East Coast and the West Coast. But everybody was worried about getting into Loran's band. You know, they were at 100. So
Yeah, well, this outfit down in Marin County, they have a huge transmitter site with like 5 kilowatt RCA transmitters that were built in a World War II era. And it's pretty cool that they've kept them operational, and they actually have operators sitting there with the old-fashioned hand-operated keying. and this weekend, they're going to be transmitting encoded messages using the Enigma encoder. And then so there's 5-digit symbols that you decode with your Enigma machine to decode the message, which is kind of neat.
I was just reading on the this thing called the Code Girls. It's about the American effort.
Yep.
Bletchley Park.
Yes.
Hope you've read that book. But it's this gal looked into it and went all the way back to the Civil War on the first encoding. That they, very primitive, slide, one wheel and a book, one wheel and a book. But anyway, went all the way up till World War One, and World War One, even there was a big effort. There was a person named Dickinson, something Dickinson, but she was the big wheel in that effort. And there was a gal and her husband named Friedman that took over, and they were on the Navy side during World War II. And the Navy, the Army and the Navy, when it finally got to be 1943, the Navy was decoding the stuff in the Pacific. And that was really, it was an accomplishment, because the Japanese, what happened was the Japanese were making it as complex as possible. And then they got it so stretched out, they got so spread out over the Pacific that their ability to encrypt was just basically, it was cut back dramatically by just the distance and the ability to get code books to people and stuff like this. There was a great deal of, we knew more about what the Japanese Navy movement did than the Japanese did. By the end of 43, we knew everything the Japanese did. They decoded, there was 2 separate sets of codes, one for the ships, one for the armor, for the troops, the army, and they were decoding everything. It was a phenomenal effort. It was, you can't help but be impressed by the level of math that was used to get. I don't even know how people begin. And the strange thing about it is a lot of times this gal in this book remarks that it was more the talent to look at patterns than it was mathematics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That was the big deal. To study.
I believe that's how Turing broke the Enigma. Was he was looking at basically how often numbers and letters came next to each other, and just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, the Navy, they looked for the word maru because that's Japanese for maru is a ship.
Yeah, Maru.
Maru, yeah, how I don't have a good accent, but the deal is they looked for that. At first, they split into 2 camps, the 20s and the 6s, the vowels and the consonants. And that's how they had 2 different camps of people working on this code. And then they got down, when they were doing the Japanese, they had to look and they had to do the translation too, because it wasn't in English, it was in Japanese characters. So there, it was.
Mind-boggling.
Oh, how they did it, I'll tell you what, and they did it with very little computation. I mean, as far as any mainframe computer to do it with.
Well, the good news about this weekend is you don't have to have an Enigma machine. There's one online that you can take your coded message and plug it in there. I'm sure they're going to give you the setup keys for it so that you can decode it.
Oh, yeah. And this, you know, the story about the Polish armies or the Polish prisoners of war are the ones that high-graded the first Enigma machine. And what they did was they didn't steal the machine, but they were working on the machines for the Germans, and they remembered what the parts looked like. And when they got home, they made them out of wood. And they put a whole Enigma machine out of wood and
Wow.
shipped it to the Brits. And Winterbottom, there's a great book. You probably all read that. Winterbottom's The Enigma Project, but or The Enigma Secrets, and that fascinated me that they actually prisoners stole the secret and shipped it to the Brits. It was an amazing piece of work.
Gary, do you have a radio on in the background?
Yes, I'm listening to some Morse code. Is it coming through?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you guys copy it?
no,
I bet Indicoffer's on there.
If you are a Star Trek fan too, the Kobayashi Maru was one of the 10.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys know that.
oh, yeah,
Maru.
yeah,
I don't-
where Captain Kirk just went
Yeah.
around it.
But it was a Japanese puzzle or kind of thing. So that's why Maru is a ship. So every Japanese ship has a Maru after it.
Does it mean ship, or what does the word mean? Ship?
Yeah.
Okay,
A little bit.
or something like that.
So that's what he was, how they figured it out. You might have missed what Dan said about that's how they figured out some of the coding.
Yeah, where they actually
a
look
lot-
for that word.
Japanese coding even before the war, right? I think they had a lot of information. Is what
Oh yeah,
books that I've read, that they were able to figure out a lot of things beforehand. So
But they didn't act on it, and that's why Pearl Harbor happened.
yeah, that might have been on purpose, right?
well that.
You don't know,
That's
yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily true. They had the information, but it was after the fact. It was because it took so long. You see, they weren't really in 1941. There was no political pressure to do this kind of work.
Ah,
Or there was a political pressure to stay out of the war, right? I mean, that was part
Yeah,
of
it was more of a separationist kind of deal.
yeah. And then that would have been terrible for England. That probably would have ended England, right? There would have been no place to land in the northern side of Europe, right? If they couldn't bring all the ships over or all the hardware over to England and land that stuff, if England would have fell.
Well,
Yeah.
and of course, after Pearl Harbor, they went out and they scrounged out of, not scrounged, that's a poor term. They found young ladies out of every major school in the East. They got them out of Bryn Mawr, they got them out of, every school. And what they asked for was people that had linguistic skills and mathematics skills. They didn't have to be degreed in it. They just needed the skills. And they went to these different deans of students and heads of the mathematics department in these different schools, because men were just going away. They couldn't keep men on board.
yeah,
So they got tons of women. And literally the accommodations, they didn't have real accommodations for the women until really late in 43. And there was quite a battle in Washington, D.C., because a lot of it was done right through there. And really the whole encryption business with the ladies, it resulted in the wax and the waves. Navy and the Army Women's Service, because they got to the point where they had to get some kind of military thing going on. And there was a big difference between this lady that wrote the book. She was writing there was a lot of differences between the Army and the Navy. The Navy, if you got pregnant, you were gone. And they wouldn't even let you back as a civilian. If you were in the Army, well, they were pretty forgiving about the whole thing. They needed the people. But the Navy was a lot more forthright in this area. And it cost them people. It cost them people. It was very sad state of affairs as far as I was concerned.
Did they say how many women were actually in the Army and the Navy, the waves on the wax? Did they say?
Thousands. There was, there were women flying airplanes all the way to Europe. They were flying transoceanic and trans-Pacific with B-17s. Anything would fly. All these gals were all qualified. That was a big part of the Women's Army Air Corps.
Yeah, they're delivering the planes, in other words.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
ferry pilots. What do they call them? The WASPs. WASPS.
Women's Air Service, something or other.
Yeah. But they flew everything. I mean, one day it'd be a P-40 and next day it's a B-17. They were flying,
Were they flying from Seattle, or were they building them there? Right, they're building the plane.
well, they were built all over the United States. Lockheed and the B-24s were all built up in Ford built a great deal of those up in Dearborn.
My dad was a B-24 pilot. So, but yeah, they would fly them to the coast, and then they would, take them there, because that's a long haul,
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
there was, but there after the war, those ladies, they tried to get jobs as pilots, and they had it was a long time before commercial pilots were ladies. I don't know who the first commercial pilot was. It was a woman, but it took a while to get that over the curve. I'll tell you that right now.
Yep.
All these guys coming back too, right? So
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And a lot of them became, commercial pilots. So
yeah, so they had all these commercial
Yeah.
pilots.
my dad didn't, but he had 3,000 hours flying all around the Pacific. And they left the mainland from Seattle, went to Kauai, and he was part of Kelly's Cobras, I think so they called it, precision bombing. And they flew from around the Pacific, and they ended up over Japan. They were actually in the air on a mission in a different part of Japan the day they dropped the atomic bomb. It was several hundred miles away in a different part of Japan, and they could see the cloud. They didn't know about it, but So
Yeah, at the time it was extremely top secret.
yeah, you're right. And like I say, and that's one thing they apparently did. They kept on doing their other missions. So, I mean, if it didn't work, I guess it'd still be things going on. So
Yeah. Yeah, one of the most interesting things talking about women, and my first job was with the government, or my first good job was with the government. And we worked out of this out of the old federal building, which was on First Avenue in downtown Seattle.
Yep.
And when we moved in, so that would be 1974, 75, somewhere around there. There were no women's restrooms on the floor that we moved into, because when, most federal employees were men.
Yeah.
And so they had to, we had to go down to the 5th floor to use the restrooms. And the men's room up on our floor was enormous. I mean, it was probably as big as my house. And so they just put a dividing wall up between the two and put women's toilets in, and everything was fine.
Yeah.
It didn't take them very long, but that
So-
was.
now history is repeating itself. They're only making now. There's you can every restroom is like around here. The new restrooms are no sex restrooms, right? You need male or female, but they're single use kind of thing. But,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I got stuck on maintenance duty at Marine Corps Recruit Depot down San Diego. And I ended up over cleaning the women Marines barracks. You know, just the restrooms and the hallways. And we were all surprised to find urinals in all the restrooms. This is wonder how this got here. Well, it ends up that, you know, this base had been around a long time. They built it back in the teens, 20s. And they never had a women Marines were new things back in World War II. So when they built the barracks, it was initially a man's barracks there. So
Yeah.
Franklin, are we ready to get started?
yeah, let's get started. Anybody
So-
got heat kits? Well, actually, or you can do your thing first, and then we can do heat kits or why.
Go ahead with the radio.
Okay. Anybody want to show their heat kits?
Let's see, do I
How
have-
about you, Larry?
trying to think if I can-
Oh, you're muted, Larry.
I got it, but it's out in the shop. I could take you out there and show you.
Awesome. How about Mark? You got a heat kit?
Well, same thing out, it's out and wrapped up. And I missed last week in the helicopter, so.
Yeah.
I've got one.
Tell us. Oh, there you go. I want to shoot the show. Go ahead,
I'm
Gary.
pointing to it right behind me.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, oh, the stereo receiver, yeah.
Let
Right.
me highlight you there. Tell us about it. Right there.
Yeah, it's a beauty. It's a 60 watt per channel RMS, very solidly built, all modular AM FM stereo. It's from the 70s, so it's not
Yeah.
really an antique, but I love it. It's my go-to stereo system.
And you said you built it? You built it.
I did not. I have a very close friend who built it. He was the original owner, and when he moved to Georgia, he couldn't take it with him, so he gave it to me. How nice.
So tell us the features of it. Is how many watts?
60 watts per channel, and it's got the best FM receiver in it that I have here, as far as just not the most sensitive, but the stereo separation and just sound quality is the best. And it's got a good, number of other inputs. I use it I have a CD player hooked up to it. I don't know if you can see back here, there's an old turntable.
Oh yeah.
That I'm fixing up, and I plug the audio in through that so I can listen to it. It's a nice asset on the workbench to have that there, the two speakers. Whoa, what's that? Somebody chasing the cat away?
No, Heathkit's still in business. I looked them up. I was curious, and they restarted themselves back in like 2021. You go online, they're actually trying to sell some things again, but
Yeah,
I
it's
found
not really the same Heathkit though. But
no,
it's-
the
But they bought
really
the right,
expensive and not practical stuff.
and expensive, and yeah.
Yeah,
Heath-
I can't see it staying in business the way they're doing it.
Yeah. Heathkit was quite an outfit. They had the best assembly manuals and pictorials. You could learn electronics that way, learn how to solder. Their soldering instructions were very good.
what was this separation between Knight and Heathkit? I never understood that.
Well, Knight was a different company, and it wasn't they didn't have anywhere near as many products. I mean, they made some quality products too, but nowhere near the volume. And that was Allied Radio. That was their kit brand.
Oh,
I think Lafayette had something as well, didn't they?
They may have had, yeah, they had some, not near. Knight had a lot of kits,
Yeah.
and I don't know. They might have been. I don't know. who was
ICO,
first.
ICO made a lot of kits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. well, a lot of companies were making kits at one time. I mean, Fisher made kits, and Scott, I think, did too, you know, the stereo end for a while.
Dynaco.
Dynaco, yeah. But I had my first, I guess, well, I talked my parents into buying it for me for my, I don't know, it's about my 10th birthday or something like that. It was a Span Master. It had all kinds of knobs, and it was a super regenerative receiver. It was actually terrible, but but and so on my birthday came this little package. Well, they screwed up and sent a grid dip oscillator, so I sent that back, and then eventually got it. And then my 3 older brothers built it. I wasn't very smart to build it at the time, and they built it, and it actually worked the first time. They followed. They had real good instructions, just like Hughes kit. Maybe not quite the, you know, but pretty darn good instructions. And they built the thing, and it worked right out of the, you know, right from the get go. They constructed the antenna, you know, about a 50-foot wire antenna with a wire lead, brought it in, you know, all that stuff, and it worked perfect, you know. So it was a lot of fun for me at that age.
My first Heath kit was a Heath kit GR81, and it was a super regenerative general coverage receiver, like 4 tubes, I think. And those things are excellent. They're stable, they're sensitive.
Sure, that wasn't a super het?
No, it was a regen.
Okay, or maybe it was super het with regen in the.
Could have been.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was a super het actually.
Okay, yeah.
But
you can still find those, you know, because they're collector's items. And that was my father-son project. I was about 9 years old, and I learned how to solder, and that just kind of got me into electronics big time.
So Dynaco as a kit, were they still that super expensive? I mean,
They were really high quality.
they were all high quality. They weren't super expensive. It was less than if you go buy a equivalent power, you know, already built, you know, amplifier or something like that. Yeah, it was more economical than that.
ST70 is the one that everybody wants, right? That's the couple $1,500 to $2,000 amplifier, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what I've been told. Huh? And they came
Could
as
be,
kits.
yeah.
They come as kits at that price, or were they much cheaper? Or
Oh,
is
they
it-
didn't cost that when they were on the
Right.
market. They were way,
Oh, so-
way less than that.
or antique? Then that's good. They've gone up in value.
Yeah, it's the hi-fi crazies that have driven the prices up like that.
Yeah,
Oh, so they weren't this.
that must be a tube amp.
Yes, it's two. Yeah.
but not crazy money like you would. Yeah. For that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and actually a lot of it is the who really run the price up too was a lot of the Asians, because they like the Macintoshes, they bought up the tube Macintosh gear, and then
The
when they cleaned all that out, then they started buying all the Fishers and Scotts and all the other, you know, classic, you know, that's why you see this crazy, well, like the 400 there, I bought it for 15 in an estate sale.
Oh wow.
Which is a fantastic price. Probably when restored, probably maybe they would get 1,000 or 2,000. You know, if you so market it right, they're nuts. You know, I mean, when actually it would cost that much to build one today. If Fisher was in business building that set today, it probably cost a couple grand to build it the way they built it. You know, back in the 60s.
Macintosh has always been expensive, though, right?
Yeah, even more so. Yeah.
Yeah, they were always top of the line. Luxury.
Yeah, Macintosh is really well built, but they may not have been the very best performing. You know, some of the other, you know, sets might work just as good, but they were really built super nice. You know, and actually, so is like the Fishers and the Scotts. They're all really quality. You know, for the most part, real quality builds.
I used the Mac when I was I worked in electromagnetic compatibility. We used to do AF susceptibility tests, where you take a transformer and you drive a line. You know, you run the current through the secondary of the transformer, and then you drive the signal under the line from the primary. Special transformers they built, but we used 200 watt Macs.
Yeah, they made some big powerhouses. You know.
Oh, 200 watt Macs with those tubes with, and I don't even remember what the number is because it doesn't come to mind, but it had a ceramic insulator on top.
I don't know. I think Glenn
And-
said it.
And you'd crank that baby up, and we had a blower motor built into it because those PA tubes would just run hotter than a pistol. And because you get a lot of mismatches when you're doing crazy stuff like that. And it,
Ceramic tops.
Yeah.
I blew one up. My big thing I did in the lab, I blew up. I was making a 1 kilohertz propagating antenna, and I left the damned amp on while I went to lunch, and it came back and it was burned up. But
Oh. There's a lot of environmental test labs that have like vibration shaker tables, and they'll drive those with Macintosh amplifiers at some, you know, because they're very broadband and they can put all kinds of spectral, you know, patterns into them.
yeah,
And like I say, they can stand a mismatch.
Yes.
well, when you do Vibe, they have Miller Brothers, and then there's a couple, because I used to work with the Vibe guy. He'd have some would break, and I'd go down and help him. And he had this. They use mercury vapor rectifiers at the time. Great big nasty suckers.
Yep.
About 1.5 foot.
Purple.
Oh yeah, and but they had the new solid state ones. We bought a 12,000 foot-pound Umholtz Dickey, and that baby had some guts. I ain't kidding you. That it had an armature that weighed more than 2 guys that went down through the center of it. Because it's just a speaker, right? It's just
Right. That's a big transducer.
a big
Yeah.
transducer, and you got this coil that's about as big around as an old-fashioned washing machine. A great big thing. And you could, but my guy used to play Jingle Bells through it and all that. for Christmas time. You know, he'd take a 2x12 and bolt it on the bed, and he'd crank that thing up. You could hear Jingle Bells all through the building because he could really drive 12,000 foot, nothing to fool with. So,
But there's a question for you now. You know, we were talking about this the other day, and they were asking me about this. You know, like noise canceling headphones, how they work. You know, how they actually they amplify the sound in an opposite sine wave, an opposite sound wave.
Right, opposite phase, yeah.
Could they do that with like a system like that to cut down on vibrations?
Oh, you'd need an equally big transducer in the opposite phase. So
Yeah.
twice that much power, twice as much power. I think what people did was they wore those big headphones to protect their hearing.
Yeah.
And then they would do it in a soundproof chamber to
But they
prevent.
talk a lot about how vibration, you know, from sound, like especially when you're shooting rockets and stuff like that, right? So if you had that kind of thing, I mean, they go to an extreme expense to cut down the vibrations, right?
The trick's gonna be, you only can have them working in phase in one physical locality, and because I mean they're big things, you know, and so there'd be a place where you could cancel out the vibration, but somewhere else away, you know, on the other side of it, you may not be have a good
Multi-directional,
situation.
right? You know, like you're like the LiDAR where it actually sends out sound and that kind of stuff.
Well, if you take like 2 speakers, two identical, you know, like say stereo speakers that are say they're sealed up air suspension, and if you put the 2 faces together and you wire and you flip the phase, I mean you put it in mono so they're getting the same thing, the same loudness, same power, and you flip the phase, you know, I mean you reverse the phase on one of them, they'll almost perfectly cancel and you'll hear no bass. But if you move them, if you open them up, or you know, they're not perfectly canceling in all locales. So that's what I'm saying. If you had 2 of those big transducers, yeah, you could probably get the cancel in one somewhat, but maybe not everywhere. I'm thinking that because
They've been using phones to actually sense it, you know, actually I mean, they can actually zero on exactly what the phase is, right? So you're actually telling the computer to actually tell what kind of phase that you're actually getting, and then by doing that, they could match it exactly with the computer, right? It could tell
well,
exactly.
yeah, but how about because the sound waves behind it are different spacing and stuff. I'm not so sure you could cancel. I mean, well, anyway, I know you can cancel speakers. You put them really close, but if you pull them apart, you don't get, because you got sound that's going off different sides and they're different distances and stuff. And so I don't think you can do as good cancellation.
Well, you have to have a super microphone that could actually pick up every different phase that came out.
No,
And
Yeah.
that would actually shoot out the phase to cancel that sound wave, right?
You know, back in the 70s, that's how they did quadraphonic. Quadraphonic was just stereo that had a phase shift on either side and it gave you the appearance of 4 different signal sources.
Yeah.
But
I just put in the chat a YouTube video you guys should take a look at. You want to look at phase. This is a thread that I watch, a guy named Vertasium, and it's the Navy's wave pool. And he goes through on how they actually make the waves and can cancel them and add them and simulate anywhere in the world. It's really cool to watch. If you guys get a chance, take a look at that.
Cool, thanks, Mike.
Not very good, Mike. I mean, Gary.
Oh, yeah.
Dan, before quadraphonics, there was reverb, right? Where they actually had they actually slowed down the phase of the rear speakers, right, to give it an echo effect.
yeah, it was kind of it was kind of like reverb on crack, you know. It was, you know, I mean, it was a game that everybody was playing. I mean, everybody wanted more, right?
Yeah, and
I put it-
Dynaco made a system that you put a center speaker and you would wire it between the 2 hots. And so just the stuff that was out of phase from the 2 left and right channels would come in. It'd be a different you know, like a center channel. And they also did something, I think, to cause a rear channel too, that you could do, but it's like more like a diamond pattern of speakers instead of 2 in the front and 2 in the back. It was more like 1 in the middle, 2 in the sides, and 1 behind you.
Yeah,
But it was a passive system. It didn't require any extra amplifiers or anything.
I worked for Munn Stereo back in the 70s, and putting car stereos in. And I always said that's the best job I ever had. It was in Honolulu. I worked out on Kapiolani, but I put a 20-watt amp, which is nothing these days, in a Volkswagen, in a Beetle, and we put 2 speakers in the back and 2 in the doors. And you would turn up that 20-watt amp. I don't know how you tell the difference in separation. I mean, it was just everything. You're in this VW and you've got all this stuff coming at you all at once. And it was, I don't know, people are crazy when it comes to what they put in their cars, but that for 20 watt, I couldn't. Today people put 2 and 500 watts. Of course, those are linears and they're not, or they're switchers, not linears, but
yeah.
Hey, speaking of noise cancellation, isn't there a car at the high end, like a BMW or something, that has the ability to cancel out road noise by actually picking up the sound and then amplifying it and turning it out of phase and running it through a speaker into the cars, so it cancels it out?
Yeah,
Bentley.
I think there's several of them that do that to some extent, but they don't. I mean, it wouldn't be a perfect cancellation, but it'd be a very noticeable reduction.
At the low end, yeah.
Yeah, right.
I seen one on I don't know, one of those crazy Discovery Channel shows, and they work it off the suspension, where the suspension's oscillating like this, and they pick it up, and then they somehow can't, they noise proof the interior to the point where you can actually have a normalized environment to do this with. I mean, that's an expensive car. It's got to be a Bentley or a Rolls or something like that.
Yeah.
BMW, Mercedes. There you go.
Yeah.
There's a Maybach too that has that in. Of course, that's a Mercedes limousine, basically.
But the Air Force down at Wright Pat used to have a room that was totally normalized. It had no noise in it at all. It was anechoic to the point where you could hear your own heartbeat. That was the only noise in the room. If you weren't moving, you could hear your heartbeat.
That's what they complain about those noise canceling headphones. Is it's kind of creepy because you can hear your heartbeat, because it doesn't cancel that out for some reason.
Well,
I guess it's because it's in your ear, right? I mean,
by the Air Force, it wouldn't allow anybody in there alone. Because if you were in there alone, there was a good chance you might go off the rails a little bit. There was it wasn't a healthy environment to be in by yourself,
So do you know how the system, how that works? I know it must have microphones in there, right? To pick up the sound, outside sound.
No,
No. So how
no,
do
that's just got, it's soundproof. They have all kinds of dampening material. Oh, Linda, your voice is not coming through.
Anechoic material,
Yeah, it absorbs and it's anti-reflective and stuff like that. It's
Well,
all
but
passive.
I'm talking like the headphones because that's how they work, right? They must pick up how do you get the opposite phase? How do you know what?
Reverb unit that I had.
What?
I'm talking about the headphones. How do you get the opposite? How do you pick up detect the opposite phase so you can actually send that music back? Or is there a way?
That's very well running to an amplifier device. You can get the opposite phase on the output of
Sansui reverb box.
Mike help me out on that, but there's like when you run into a base of a transistor, you'll get I think no phase shift out the emitter, but maybe out of the collector it's phase shifted. I'm trying to remember the typical. Yeah, he's nodding his head. And also when you go through capacitor networks and stuff, you can do different phase shifts by there's different ways to electronically do that. You could use op amps and different devices and make all kinds of shift and stuff.
And the semiconductors are fast enough that you won't be able to detect it, even though it's not a perfect phase shift.
Okay.
But I was kind of wondering, how do they detect it from the outside? Because it eliminates the outside noise, right? I mean,
But you
You have to have a microphone or something to pick it up, sure.
okay, so they pick up with a microphone and then they just flip it over. Just
Flip it over, and you have to amplify it to the same but opposite phase, but it also depends on, like say, you don't get perfect cancellation because because of the way the sound spreads and stuff. It's not like you can take two opposite phase signals and cancel everything. There's only so much you can do.
Apple's got these new they're called EarPod Maxes, and they're just incredibly, somebody can be yelling at your ear and you can't hear them. It's just bizarre. And they are like $500-600. They're crazy money, but they're super lightweight and they're just like really interesting on how they work. I just couldn't understand how they can actually make them silence. The guy's right next to you yelling, and then you can lift them up just a little bit and you can hear, you can hear what he's doing. But if you have them on your ears, you can't hear anything.
Yeah.
And I would think it would get rid of a lot of the vibration too.
Yeah.
What do you got to show?
Myron's got something there.
You're muted. There you go, Myron.
This is a Crosley book radio.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
So they made about 5 or 6 different versions of this, I guess. I got upside down. There we go.
Yeah.
It was as you like it, huh? Okay.
Yeah, and there were novelty items, about 55 or 56, sold for like $50.
Wow.
But they're hybrid design, so they have 3 tubes and 2 output transistors.
Are they sub-miniature too?
Yeah, they're those little pencil tubes, and it ran on a 4-volt mercury cell and a 45-volt battery. Was the 45-volt battery that's like a long and skinny guy, like a extra big 9-volt battery. So I haven't got the batteries yet to see if it works, but
What Raytheon tubes?
Probably, yeah, they would have been, Raytheon made them, other people made them too, I think, but, I didn't know, I thought we were gonna do C this week. We were doing like ABC, weren't we?
We went to Y, I think is what it was supposed to be.
Oh, okay, well,
Did you miss? Did you
I
miss
haven't
it?
shown this yet, so I thought I would show it. Sometimes, I guess if you bought them, you could have, an inscription engraved from whoever sold it to you. I don't know.
55. That was a lot of money, right? $50.
Yeah, it was a definitely,
You could get a TR1 for the same price,
a deluxe item, but,
but novelty. So you could actually, nobody can steal your radio then too, right? You could hide it in the bookshelf.
that reminds me of those, weren't those Heathkit things that were at our auction one time? There were ultrasonic burglar alarms that looked like books.
Oh yeah.
Reminds me of that. So anyway, I haven't shown that yet, so I thought I would show it.
That's okay.
The switch is on this, it's a slide switch here. So I don't know how you get it to turn off unless you put a weight on it or you put it in a bookshelf that
Oh,
closes
so
it.
it closes it. Oh, I get it.
Yeah,
That's,
so the later ones, they actually went to a normal switch on the volume control.
well, that's no fun.
Because that
like-
was a problem.
Novelty automatically turns on when you open it and then turns off when you close it.
Yeah, and since those miniature tubes, sub-miniature tubes, they would have come right on with direct filaments.
Oh yeah.
No warm-up time or anything, so.
Can you get mercury for it, or can you get a substitute?
I'm sorry, what?
You said it uses a mercury battery, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's 4 volts. It turns out you can get a 3.75 volt battery for the same form
Well-
factor. It's close to a AA.
You can get lithium and iron
Lithium-
phosphate. Or no, lithium and ion at that voltage, you think?
Yeah. I've looked around and they're easy to
What-
get.
18650 be small enough to fit in there though. So that's bigger than a AA battery, right?
Oh, I checked that out. So yeah, a AA is still 19, right? Or something. I forget. No, that's not right.
No,
No.
This number- is the diameter, right? And the 650 is the length.
Yeah, so I think you need something that's 500. It's like an 18500 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I was able to find stuff that would work, but I haven't bought it yet to see if it works.
But what is
But
that
it-
test? It's a 500 or something. It's a little shorter, but a little thicker. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Cool.
So,
Very cool. Where'd you get it?
oh, I got it on eBay. I've been watching it for a long time.
What did you have to pay for it?
It's like $90.
Wow, that's a deal.
I thought it's pretty good. They generally sell for a lot more.
And perfect condition, right? I mean, it looks
Yeah, it's absolutely, that's the thing. Some of them are kind of show wear on the spines like there and so forth. But just, I thought they were pretty cool. They only sold them for a couple of years. So it's a plastic actually case inside with the metal chassis drops in from the top. And then this screw here, lets you pull it out.
So I just looked it up. $59 in 1955 would have cost you would be equivalent today's of $669.
I can believe that, yeah.
That's great.
I may be going back in the past, but is As You Like It, wasn't that a Shakespeare play?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Is my memory doing well or not?
Awesome. Job, Lyles.
So yeah, I'm muting my video here because, especially because I've got a patch on my eye today. I had cataract surgery this morning, so
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Just
You look
make
like,
sure you do those eye drops. That was
Yeah.
that's the most important part of the recovery.
twice a day for the next
You look
month.
like Davos of the Daleks with
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
headphones.
or like an ant with the eyeball, right?
you had the
Yeah,
custom
right. Ant-Man.
eye drops? You had the custom made eye drops?
Yeah, they have two choices. So you can either like order from your pharmacy 3 different ones, and then you have to put all 3 in your eye, or you can just give them $65 and they make it for you in one drop. So it's mixed together. So I did that. This is the second one I've done. The first one was like 5 years ago and it turned out great. So
Yeah.
really looking forward to it.
I couldn't
Yeah, I've
believe
had both done.
the first one I got done. I was like, man, everything looks like HD. The cataracts were so bad in my eyes, and I was like, man, I can't believe how blind I was. And I was like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
well, when I had one done and the other one not done, then the color difference was so amazing.
It was yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, I got one eye in HD and the other eye back in black and white, basically.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, Cliff used to say he had a really bad cataract in one eye. He said one eye was blue and the other eye was yellow.
Oh, really?
So
That's,
he'd look
the
at
way it
sky.
looks, yeah.
He'd look at the sky and it had green sky. So blue sky with one eye and green sky with the other.
Oh,
And
What
then
I
then he
noticed
had-
was
then
with
he had
the
second.
new one that I had was like when it's almost dusk, I could still see blue sky, but the one that wasn't done, it looked totally dark.
Oh, yeah.
So I was seeing more UV, I think, with the
Yeah.
good one.
Thank goodness for modern medicine.
I know. My eyes are the best they've ever been. They corrected my from glasses, and they also my eye the vision is, I don't remember with it anyway. It's better than 2020. It's like 1520 how it works. 2015. Where you can actually, I can read the next line down, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, it did really well." And then one eye I didn't even have anesthesia on it. They just went in there and they did a local, because I kept falling asleep with the anesthesia. He's like, maybe you might not need anesthesia. He kept trying to wake me up because you gotta keep your eye.
eye open.
Yeah, you gotta keep looking at a certain area. If you fall asleep, your eyes will twitch and move. So
Yeah,
he's like,
right.
you're awake. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it without anesthesia. And it was fine. And the first lens he put in, it didn't fold out right. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw it. They put it in like a straw, and then it rolls out. And it's just the weirdest thing, because you go from being totally blind, just seeing light, to actually I could see the LEDs on the light, because the light they were shining in my eye. When that thing folded out, and it was like it just revealed itself like magic. Yeah. I had to suck it out again and put another one in. So, but that was really,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to do. I keep telling people, if you're worried about getting cataract surgery, don't. It takes 10 minutes and 2 weeks of eye drops and you're done.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
why'd you wait 5 years, Myron?
Well, they wouldn't do my other one for a while, and then they had the COVID. They were out for a couple of years and that kind of thing. So,
Oh.
Your eyes have to be at a certain point before they'll do the surgery.
yeah, they didn't. I wasn't qualified like 2 years ago, they said. So,
Yeah, they did mine within 3 weeks of each other. I think it was like, and I was like, yeah, let's get it done. Let's do it. Because it was like, oh my gosh, walk around with one eye that was all blurry.
Hi, puppy.
Oh, you got a little doggy, a little poodle, a puppy. Larry, is that a new puppy?
It's my little Chihuahua. He's about 2.5 years old. I bought him when he was brand new. He was about a handful. That was it.
Yeah, they're tiny when they're little.
My a miniature pincher, she was 2 pounds and fit in the palm of your hand, and now she's 11. So
This one, I think, 2 pounds, 2 ounces.
But Mike, are you doing something tonight or?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
ready to,
if you guys are ready, I'm gonna give you guys a quiz. So there's a test tonight. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
What I want you to do is answer I've got 2 questions and then we'll talk about them. I thought it'd be a good way to talk a little bit about impedance and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'll throw it up on the screen, and then I want everyone to enter your answer in the chat. We'll make it kind of fun this time, instead of just listening to me talk. So we're going to start with a real simple resistor divider here. We have a carbon resistor at 1K and a wire wound at 1K with a 10-volt DC battery on it. And so my question for you is, what is the voltage across the wire wound resistor. A 10 volts or A 0 volts, B less than 5 volts, C 5 volts, greater than 5 volts, but less than 10. D is 5 volts exactly, and E is 10 volts. Should be an easy one. No cheating looking at other people's answers.
Yeah. Well,
Unless you have to, then that's okay.
Oh, you should just send it to Mike, not everybody. That's what I should.
Oh, no, no, go ahead and send it to everyone.
Oh.
It's more fun that way. That's okay.
But then,
We'll give it just a couple more seconds here to get some more answers.
oh, it looks like we got everybody but one is the same.
Larry knows something the rest of us don't.
Uh-oh, Larry.
okay.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and let you know. The answer should be D. Unless you want to dispute it, we can discuss that. But basically what we've got is a simple voltage divider. And the nice thing about resistors is if it's split like that, the voltage across each resistor should be exactly the same. And so you should have 5 volts across the carbon resistor and 5 volts across the wire wound resistor. Does anyone want to disagree with that? That's good.
Larry.
Good choice. Okay. So here's the next question. So what we've done here is we've changed the circuit a little bit. Now we have an alternating current going through the thing, and it's again at 10 volts, but now we're gonna have 10 megahertz going through there, through the carbon resistor and the wire resistor. So now let me know what you think the answer would be. We'll give just a little bit more time here for people to answer or to cheat and then answer whatever they want to do. Okay, so the answer to this one is indeed C. And you might want to know, well, why is it C? And Larry answered it there. The reason why it's C is because the wire wound resistor actually, because it's wire wound, actually acts as an inductor. And so you don't have a pure DC resistance. When we look up at this one, when you're measuring things this way with a DC voltage, you really don't come into impedance. You're looking at true resistance, because impedance is the basically it's the resistance of an alternating current, where DC is more the DC resistive nature. And to get into it a little bit, and I didn't expect you to come up with an exact answer here, but the reason why is, interestingly enough, wire wound resistors have about can be up to about 500, or excuse me, 50 microhenries of inductance associated with it. And you need to find out the reactive inductance using this formula here, 2 pi FL. And so if we're looking at 10, oops, I put 1 megahertz. I think it was 10. So my mistake here, that should be 10. And then with 50 microhenries, you get a let's see, an inductive reactance of about 3141. Then what you do is once you have that, now you can figure out what the impedance is. And the impedance, you may look at this and realize, you know, that's actually Pythagorean's theorem. You know, it's the square root of the x squared times y squared. Well, the reason why you do that, oh, and this should be plus, not minus. Boy, I really screwed this up. So these should be plus, not minus. I apologize. And what that is doing is it's figuring out that the DC component is actually kind of flat, but the AC component is more vertical on your graph. And so you're actually trying to figure out the hypotenuse. And so when you put those numbers in, that ends up being about 3,000 ohms rather than 1,000 ohms. So, you know, to AC, this looks closer to 3,000 ohms. You have your DC component as well as your AC component.
At a particular frequency though, too.
Yes, and the important
That's
thing
right.
here is you're mentioning, as you change your frequency, this impedance is actually going to change. And that's a really important factor to understand, is the impedance is variable based on your frequency.
And I would assume also that the inductance would vary depending on the value, because I'm just making a guess, or do they have different? I mean, they like the wire wound, they have some resistive wire, and I suppose they have some that are more resistive than other wires, but wouldn't there be more turns on a higher resistance in a resistor,
Well,
generally speaking?
How do
that-
you find out
that's
the
a
micro
good
henries
question.
though, too? I was kind of wondering there, because would all 1K wire rounds have a certain amount of micro henries?
Oh, no, it'll vary drastically, because a lot of it is going to depend on, you know, how big the resistor is around. If you've got a large
The wattage,
diameter
yeah.
versus small.
How far the wires are apart too, right? I mean,
How
Right,
far the
all that
wires
stuff.
are apart, exactly. How thick the wire is, the material that is wrapped around, all of those kind of things will affect it.
Yeah,
And
because
so-
you did say assume a certain amount of inductance.
oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And you could actually get I guess an inductance meter, at least for that would measure at least some frequency, and you can get a better idea, but then that would be at the frequency range that the meter can operate in.
Exactly. And I used 50 microhenries. From what I read, that's kind of like on the top end, but it really kind of shows what happens. But the thing is, you know, if you increase this frequency a lot, that impedance changes drastically. And so, you know, it's really important to know about that, because, you know, instead of having a 5-volt drop here, you're going to have maybe a 7-volt drop. So now, why does all of this matter? Well, the interesting thing in RF circuits or high frequency circuits, you never want to use wire wound resistors. In fact, they use what they call thin film resistors that will basically not have any inductance associated with it, or very, very, very small. And so it's just kind of an interesting thing that I thought people might find interesting, that just because you know, you've got two resistors here, they may work differently under frequency. And, you know, by just some simple numbers I did here, even though I put the wrong numbers in, I apologize. You can see that that's a drastic change in resistance too. But you'll notice in high frequency stuff, they're never going to use wire wound resistors.
And the wire wound resistor, as well as other types, have some capacitance too. If you go high enough in frequency, it starts to
Absolutely.
matter too.
And to be totally fair, when you look at this formula, it is actually more complicated than that. It's R squared plus X squared, and X squared is actually the inductive reactance and the capacitive reactance. I was ignoring the capacitive reactance.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
what causes it to have a capacitive, becomes a capacitor? I mean,
Well, this a physical thing about there is kind of
Well, how I understand capacitors is that it's like a Leighton jar, right? It has a dielectric between the two different plates, right? So I mean, that's how capacitors work.
yeah, but there's still some physical. It looks in some way like a small set of plates. I mean, there's always some. I mean, and I don't remember the exact mechanism, but there is, you know, a capacitor's two metal plates, and well, there's a connection to the resistive material, and there's kind of a, you think about it, it's kind of a shape like um there's
Like a capacitor. Yeah, like,
between those two. There's also capacitance against two other objects and stuff too, which is a whole different thing. But
this might be more physical than anything, but it would be the wires that are wrapped around, or would it be
You could have capacitance between each coil of the wrap.
that's right.
You could have capacitance, even the wires themselves, you know, if you look at a transmission line or a piece of coax, that
Mhm.
actually has capacitance between the center conductor and the ground shield.
even
You know,
also?
And
Okay.
so capacitance exists everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's typically small, you know, in something like this, but you know, it is indeed there.
Yeah, and so and a straight wire has some inductance, even though it's not wound in a coil.
Exactly.
But at very high frequencies it matters. At these frequencies, generally not so. But that's
Right.
And the physics between that is that the electricity doesn't actually go in the wire; it goes around the outside of the wire, right? So that's why you'd have.
I believe the capacitance is related to the wire relative to something else.
So that's why you get that Leighton jar theory. I mean, the Leighton jar idea. You have two plates. When the two wire wraps around, you get the next wrapped wire would actually be, there would be capacitance between the two.
yes,
That
that's
makes
part
sense.
of it.
That's part of it. Because a wire wrapped resistor is just a wire that's wrapped around a insulator.
Form. Yeah,
Right.
form.
And they'll use different kinds of wires to create, you know, different resistive amounts.
But
You know, like-
the theory of it is that they take that wire so it has different thickness of wire in there to get your different sizes of resistance, right? But it's basically just a coil, right? I mean, it's just wrapped
Yeah.
around an insulator, all right? I mean, that's
Well,
is that right?
that is a type of resistor, but if you remember in the old, what is it, the 20s radios or 30s, you know, they had the line cord resistors, right? The curtain burners.
Yeah.
And that actually didn't have instead of being coiled, what they did is they just used, I think it was nichrome wire, and they just ran it in there. And it was just the fact that the wire itself has resistive properties. The fact that it was a long run, I believe, isn't that true?
That sounds correct. Yeah, and the heat spread out over the length of the cord, which is a good thing.
So
Yes.
if it was really short, it would definitely catch on fire. It would start to glow and burn right. I mean, it'd burn right through the insulation on the outside if you shortened it, right? Because you would have a lot more stored area.
Yeah. Well, actually, you would probably burn it if you shorted out the nichrome wire from one end to the other. You would probably blow your radio, because the radio then
Higher
the voltage wouldn't be dropped, so it would increase the voltage going to the radio.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the length of the wire would actually be the drop in that you need.
Exactly.
Oh,
And then
okay.
now the concept is, you know, you take that curtain burner, you know, just a long piece of nichrome wire. Now, if you need to put it in a smaller space, well, how do you do it? Well, you just wrap it around something. And then that's called a wire wound resistor.
There you go.
So
So-
the other thing I wanted to point out with this formula is all of this works for DC also, because if we think about it, what is the frequency of a DC signal? Well, it's 0, right? And so if we take 0, put it in here, all of this becomes 0. So XL becomes 0. XL gets squared, which is 0 squared is 0. Added that to R squared. So if your other resistor that, the resistive component is 1,000 ohms, you square it, then you take the square root of it. The impedance then is 1,000 ohms.
Okay, there you go.
And so, it works even for DC. Now I ran this formula, and this is why I screwed up and had 1 megahertz. I thought it'd be interesting to try 1 megahertz in here. When I put 1 megahertz in, XL ended up being 1,050 ohms. So, going to 10,000, it increased it. If you go to a gigahertz or 100 megahertz, this thing could really, increase significantly. So that's why high frequency is really bad. Now,
And then would it change the capacitance too as you went up exponentially, or how would that work?
as your frequency goes up, you would definitely want to be taking into account capacitance, because capacitance would become a larger and larger factor.
Right.
What would be would there be a larger form? Was there a formula for that too, or how did you figure that out?
That's just this XL here is really it's the XL plus XC. And so it's both of those together squared.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, it would go up exponentially then. That's for sure.
Well, below 1 megahertz, for example, I mean, as you pointed out, it only increased the apparent resistance a little bit, so it's not going to have much of an effect. So down to audio frequencies,
You would have
not much to worry about. When you get into 10 megahertz, you're starting to get into RF. It becomes more and more significant the higher frequency you go to. That's the take home of that.
I think, Mike, also, it may be beyond the scope of this discussion, but you're talking about capacitors and inductors. They're opposite in sign. So a capacitor is typically a positive value, an inductor is a negative value. So you wouldn't add them up like capacitance plus inductance. You would, you'd add the negative plus the positive. So they'll cancel each other out as far as their impedance goes.
At a particular frequency.
To the phase.
Yeah, to the phase.
Yep. So the other thing I wanted to mention, I've actually been talking with Mike McCrow quite a bit. I think Lyles, you have also. If we forget that this is a wire wound resistor and we look at this as a any inductor, one of the cool things that you can do, because if you think about this, if you apply an alternating current to a resistor, and we'll call this an inductor over here, and what you do is if you tune this to where half of the voltage is here and half of the voltage is here, this resistor will basically tell you what the impedance of that inductor is. Does that make sense? Because, if you put, say, if we talk about like an audio transformer, and you wanted to find out what the impedance is, if you put an audio frequency in here, say, 1,000 hertz, something like that, and then you made this a variable resistor, what you could do is change this variable resistor until the voltage drop across here is the same as the voltage drop across here.
Like a winding, not a wire wound, right?
Exactly. Yeah, just like a winding. And
right, like a transformer winding or a
exactly
winding. Yeah.
Yep. Because what you've done is you're looking at the total impedance at this point on that winding, and when the voltage drop is the same, that means that you've got an even voltage divider, and so the DC equivalent here is going to be the same as the impedance here when the voltage drop is the same across both of them. And so that's a way that you can test an inductor or the windings of like an audio transformer to determine, what its output impedance might be. Did that make sense to everyone? Because you're just looking at this as a voltage divider at that point, but because you're using AC, you're actually looking at the impedance of this. So if you get an equal voltage, say 5 volts here, 5 volts here, and then this resistor is set to say 8 ohms, well, then you know the impedance of this is also going to be 8 ohms.
That's pretty cool.
Now, that's the concept. It doesn't always work as well as you would like. Mike McCrow's been trying to do that, and the problem he keeps running into is when he puts this together, it loads the signal generator so low the voltage keeps dropping down. But nevertheless, you could actually use a variac or something and do it with 60 hertz. But again, keep in mind the impedance of this also varies with the frequency. Now, the good news is the audio spectrum isn't that huge. And so, if you pick something mid-range, something like that, you can get a good general idea. But just a little side note. So that's all I have. Hopefully that was somewhat interesting.
Oh, it was awesome.
I think if he put some series resistors from his signal generator so that the impedance test part was insignificant compared to the series resistors, then he wouldn't load his generator significantly while he's doing that testing and stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had him do. And the other thing was he was using I think a 10K pot, and I said you can't do that because you've got no variability, down in the 4 to 10 ohm range.
Right. If you're looking at a low impedance winding,
Yeah.
right.
So I suggested, if you can find just some discrete resistors, get a 4 ohm resistor, get an 8 ohm resistor, get a 16 ohm resistor, and then you can just stick those in, measure the voltages across it, and then that'll help you. But anyway, it's kind of an interesting thing that you can do.
Mike,
Yes.
I have a question. So when you say that you're dropping the resistance, people will oftentimes think that you're dropping power too, but it's not real power. It's real power is dropped by your resistor, right? So you'll heat up with your resistor, but your inductors won't necessarily heat up.
Well, they'll heat up.
They'll heat up?
Oh, yeah.
A pure inductance will heat up?
Yeah.
I thought it was the back EMF that caused it to.
Oh, back EMF can do that for sure. But the inductor will get warm because it's
It has losses in it.
Yeah.
Right, it has losses, but if you were to measure the power and heat generated per resistor will be greater than the power heat generated in inductance because there's no pure inductor. If it was a pure inductor, if it's perfect, it wouldn't have any heat generated. Just like a pure capacitance wouldn't have any heat. The only reason why a capacitor heats up because you have ESR in it.
That's probably.
That is true for the capacitor.
And inductor, it's the back EMF that causes the impedance. It's not necessary. Resistance is there because you have wire.
Right. Yeah, I think what you're saying, Dave, is I heard something there.
Anyways, that always kind of blew my brain. At least that's the way I understand. But I'm an ignorant, superstitious mechanical engineer, so I don't know these things very well. So.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a very good point, and I do know. I mean, I felt inductors, and they do perform.
Will we beat you up?
All right, I got the mute.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, even transformers get warm, right? I mean, they're
Sure.
You got
the major resistance across them.
You have the resistive losses. You have the hysteresis loss, which is because the magnetic field is working against the you know, I mean, the currents are
You're getting currents in your core, right?
right.
You know, but I think the important thing to look at, when you're looking at, say, a choke as an example in you know, a power supply, that's not going to get extremely hot because the actual impedance of it is going to be very, very low. You know, because one thing is you're dealing with 60 cycles, right? And so, you know, when you look at 60 cycles, even at maybe 1 Henry or something like that, or I'm not sure what they are, 1 to 2 Henrys maybe, you know, for a real big one. I don't think you're dealing with a lot of impedance loss going across that inductor.
Depends on your wire size and all those different factors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question.
I always thought it was like with a pure inductor, if it's perfect, right? And I'm thinking about the little coil you see in the pictures, right? If it's just perfect, that's the reason why you get that resistance loss is because you're getting a field built up in it and you're getting a back EMF on that inductor. But but in reality, you have resistance in those wires as well as other things. But if it's pure inductance, there's no, if you take a look at your phasor diagram, it goes straight up. There's no resistive component in it. And if there's you only get heating if you have a pure resistive component. So if you had a pure, and an example would be, let's say you had a pure inductor and a pure capacitor in a tank circuit. Those currents, in theory, should get enormous, and they should keep cycling back and forth, and they'll never decrease. Well, that never happens because you have resistance in there.
Right.
And if you had any heat generated in a tank circuit, in the perfect tank circuit, it would go
Well, the
forever.
heat generation is because of the resistive component. It's part of it. So definitely.
Right. And that's the only way. That's the only way that those things will heat up is because you have resistive components in both the capacitor and in the inductor. If you didn't have those huge currents in that tank circuit would keep cycling back and forth and back and forth and back and forth forever.
And what you'd have is basically infinite Q. That's
Exactly.
That's the term that they use to talk about the quality of Q is for the quality. So a high Q capacitor, for example, which are a lot easier to achieve, have very little losses.
Right. So all I was saying is for an inductor is that you may have the same impedance as a resistor, which is both in terms of a resistive component and an imaginary component. You may have the same impedance, but the amount of heat generated by that component will be less than for the same power dissipated than would be for a pure resistive component.
You're talking about in a theoretical pure environment.
Oh, I'm just saying, even in real devices, in real devices, it's the same way, because your ESR for a capacitor is really milliohms. Your resistance in a coil is oftentimes on an order of an ohm, but your resistance on a resistor may be tens of ohms.
Yeah, I don't know, because you're gonna see the voltage drop across there, and that's gonna go somewhere. So
it's due to the physics of the back EMF. It's not due to a pure resistor. It's just working on phase diagrams. If you look at your phase diagram.
No, I see what you're saying, and you're saying it's the back EMF that causes the heat loss.
What do they call that?
No, I'd say it's what causes the voltage drop.
Isn't that term true power versus apparent power or something like that? They use in AC, like in industrial stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly. It's apparent power versus it's yes. So you have watts and you have VA, volt amps, right? So if you take a look at the VA for, well, I just did this for if you take a look at a transformer and you have a 10 volt amp transformer, the true power that's dissipated across it may be on the order of 4 watts. So, you know,
Yeah, this is a problem I have with this group is I try really hard to convey simple ideas.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Oh, no, this is good because I'm trying to convey complex ideas in the simplest way. But the problem is you guys are way too smart and
No, because I don't remember all the answers. I mean, what Dave was bringing up and going, that's right, you know, but
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, that's right.
But I don't know 100% of it, and so it's good stimulating to talk about that and
Absolutely.
it's something to be aware of. You don't like when you're working audio and our low frequency in our radio, radios, not so much of an effect, but it is there, but usually it's they used to teach electronics is like if it was like less than 10%, then you kind of could ignore. I mean, if it's something that's super critical, you could ignore if it's below a certain level, and if it's above, then you want to be concerned about it. Kind of taking it into account. Why things don't exactly come out the way you think that they should. And when you're doing.
My intent for doing the quiz this way was my hope was to kind of show, how impedance works, because in working with Mike McCrow, there was some confusion there. So I thought, oh, this is kind of a good way to describe, the fact that AC actually works in circuits a little bit different than DC does. And so I tried to dumb it down in the simplest way I could.
Oh.
And hopefully I didn't oversimplify.
No, you did good. It's good. It's good stuff. So.
And thank you, David. Great points on your side.
I got a real simple question, I guess. Why wouldn't you use 2 carbon resistors? I mean, and then you wouldn't have. I mean, with AC, it wouldn't matter. It would be easier to figure out, right? Wouldn't it?
Yeah, but then I couldn't have made my point about impedance.
And Franklin, one thing you run into is that, probably more difficult to get a high-powered carbon resistor versus a high-powered wire-wound resistor.
Okay.
I mean, for high wattage, I mean, they made these wire-wound resistors for years, and so that's probably part of it. So sometimes you need to use a wire-wound resistor, this big heavy thing that does 100 watts, and you need to be aware that, if I'm running high frequency stuff, then it's not going to work out. It's not going to work out quite the way you expect it. If it's DC, it's just going to heat up, and
Right.
Also, I think with the carbon resistors, what I find is that's really, really, really hard to get really, really, really precise carbon resistors. But with wire wound or even metal film is what Mike was talking about. You can take a metal film, you can deposit on there a certain thickness. And then sometimes they take a laser and they go and they etch it out. So you can increase the resistance, and they just trim that. They stop the laser when they get 1.000 ohms, and that's impossible to do with the carbon resistor that you just kind of push together.
Yeah, and these days, almost everything, I think, that you're not going to find the old carbon resistors like you did in the past. There's so much of it now is the metal film, that style, because they're just a better resistor. They're not as they don't have the moisture absorption problem, all those kind of things. They just lock in.
And they're smaller.
So the advantage with the wire round resistor is that you can take the higher voltage.
Wattage.
You can take higher wattage for the same size.
Yeah.
Higher wattage. There we go. So
I don't know if they make. I don't know if they make metal film resistors that are, say, 100 watts or 200. Maybe they do. I haven't kept up on that, but back in the day, when you had a high, generally when you had a high wattage resistor, it was a wire wound. It almost always was in the old days, anyway.
Yeah, I know the ones that I bought recently for in the 10 ohms and less. I think they've got the aluminum case on them. And I think they're packed in ceramic, and I think they're all wire wound
Correct.
inside.
Mhm.
Well, thank you guys for keeping me on my toes.
Thank you, Mike. That was
You
great.
bet.
I learned a lot.
Keep us on our toes.
There's always been those weird questions that you need to be a physics.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, this is why I love this group, because you guys are actually interested in this stuff, and you know, you're inquisitive, and I find it just fascinating. I think it's great.
Okay.
Big brain trust.
Well, you know, you get
Think
clarity.
tank.
Actually ask questions, and then it's explained to you that way. I mean, because I mean, a lot of my education would be just reading it and trying to figure it out. And then if I can ask questions that I have curious little things, I can kind of figure it out with the physics and the whole kind of idea of it, and it kind of sinks in that way. So cool.
And a lot of this is really confusing too. I mean, you know, it gets really deep in math, and you know, it can be kind of hard to put generalities around things. But the good news working with the vintage radios, although, you know, the tube stuff can actually be pretty confusing when you're trying to understand, you know, exactly how it's working between the plates and all that. But in general, it's a lot of times you can boil it down to something simple. It may not be exact, but it'll get you close.
And isn't it kind of forgiving too? I mean, like when you talk about microprocessors and stuff, it's not forgiving. Like,
Except when you stick two hands in the chest at the same time.
So, you know, when it comes to nowadays, like with the microprocessors, and in the future, I'll be, you know, doing some stuff on the microcontroller programming and things like that. It's you don't actually get down to the low levels. You know, you're at a really high level. You know, you're dealing with a microprocessor that maybe has, you know, 100,000 or 1 million transistors on it. But for the microcontrollers, probably not that many, but nevertheless, you know, it's relatively isolated from you. So you're working at a high level. You don't have to understand about, you know, all the tunneling and all that stuff that goes on inside. That somebody else did all of that for you.
Yep.
I
Wow.
haven't got back to the coil winder yet. I will try to get to that as soon as I can.
very cool. You want to tell us about your new printer?
Yeah, so I ended up buying what's called a Bamboo X1 Carbon. It's the latest printer. My printer is really old. It does an okay job, but I've really needed something better for a long time, and so I finally decided to just buy the Bamboo X1 Carbon. It can pretty much do any filament type. I can do ABS and all kinds of stuff. Plus I can do 4 spools at once, to where I can get 4 different filaments coming in, and it automatically switches between the filaments for me. So I can change colors and stuff like that. In a couple weeks, I'll have it set up, and I'll show you guys how it works.
Do you actually have to purge the filament out through a head, or do you have a separate heater head for every color?
Great question. This one actually does the purge. It builds the purge block on the side. They call it a purge tower, I think. There's only a couple of them that have the multi-head. That's definitely the least wasteful way to do it. But this one will actually pull the filament back out, purge it, put the new one back in, purge it, and then start printing again.
Have you noticed an improvement in the print quality?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So the new one's arriving Friday. I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen all the reviews online. I've spent hours on YouTube looking at them, and yeah, they actually use LiDAR on the thing, and then they'll do a shake test because it moves so fast. They detect the amount of shake, and then when they're depositing the layers, they will actually adjust how much deposition based on what the average shake is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, let's see, maybe let me see if I can find a YouTube video. I'll show you. They've really improved things. It's just mind-boggling the stuff that they've done.
And Mike, is it about $1,500 or something like that? Or
Yeah, it's not cheap.
does the filament cost you a lot of money? Oh, you can use different kinds of filament though. So
Yeah, the filament for 1 kilogram spool is like $15 to $20, something like that.
No, so you need different colors, so it could add up quite a bit.
Yeah, I mainly do one color, but like this one is probably close to 7 or 8 times faster than the one that I currently have. Which is, I mean, let's see if I can find one here where it's doing a benchy.
Sounds cheaper than ink cartridges.
Let's see here. Let me
That's how
share.
they make all their money, right? That's how the printer companies make their money.
Yeah. Yeah, $75 for a set of ink.
They give you the printer for free, and then the ink cartridges cost you all the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is printing a little test.
Boat?
Yeah, it's super fast. I mean, right now, like if I do a project box or something, it'll take me sometimes 4 to 6 hours to print, and I can probably do it in under an hour now.
So it actually you said it actually detects the vibrations from the.
Yeah.
Movie?
Let's see.
So does this have like the camera that monitors it too? So you don't like,
Yep. Yeah, it'll look for first layer failure and let you know. Let's see.
Well, it's almost like AI, isn't it?
Yeah,
Everything.
let's see.
The idea of it actually assembling things as it's making it is just.
Oh, one of the really cool things is, let me see if I can find it. You can print things like this, and once it's done. So this is the onboard camera taking pictures as it's building it.
And all those pieces are articulated, huh?
Yep, and it builds them in place.
So when you're done, you can stretch it out and it'll wiggle.
Yep. Yeah,
It's-
so
it
he's going to
assembles
grab it
the
here.
It actually assembles it while it makes it. It's just crazy and interesting. So as a manufacturing process, it's just fantastic. I mean, you've totally eliminated all the steps of putting the parts together.
Yeah, the options for like medical devices, and it's mind-boggling what they can do now.
Look at that. That's like a chain put together.
Yeah, and it was built in place because when the design happened, they actually built it to where there was a gap between it. So you can't take it apart, but that's the way it was built, which is really cool. They can do manufacturing stuff now that you could never do before because of that. They're doing it with what they call metal sintering, to where the metal 3D printing is really cool. They actually lay down a layer of metal, and then they use a laser to fuse it. And then they'll lay down another thin layer of of metal powder, and then the laser will center it and it builds it up that way. Yeah, it's crazy the stuff that you can build.
When you program it, you have to actually put those tolerances in there. Then, huh? So the
Yeah,
tolerance-
yeah. So when you build it, yeah, you design the thing with the slight gap between it, and the printer is tight enough that it can actually do that. That it can follow all those very small gaps. The gaps, I think, typically is like 0.08 millimeters, something like that. It'll be able to handle it.
Basically, a lot of things won't be repairable, though, right? I mean, basically, when they put together like that, you can't.
Yeah, you just reprint it.
No way to take it apart, right?
Right, you just reprint it.
But as you get more and more complicated things, you would just have to reprint them. Yeah, exactly. You couldn't
Right.
repair them, right? Because they would be bought together.
Right.
And you couldn't, even if they were made out of metal, you couldn't weld the pieces back together if you had to take it apart. Interesting.
So Mike, do you have to, on your filaments, do you have to have those in a like a heated oven or something like that to keep the humidity down on them, to keep them consistent, or?
You know a lot, David. Yes, exactly. The problem with some types of filaments is they actually, what is it called, something.
Hydrophilic?
Yeah, they absorb moisture, and so you got to keep the humidity low. So what you do is, let's see if I can find a picture of it here.
Do you have a desiccant box you put them in, or?
Yeah, you can either seal them or let's see. Let me show you the AMS here.
So that means we're going to be a more manufacturing center with the lower humidity in Oregon compared to compared to the South, right? Where
Yeah, exactly.
they would have trouble with that. You'd have to have some kind of building that was.
Well, they would have to control it nuts on, Franklin. I mean, they would have to have their own either ovens or, you know, but yeah, I suppose it could be that it'd be
Yeah,
cheaper
so
to run here.
what I do is here, I'll show you here. I'll do a share again.
You also need a cheap electricity, right? So Washougal would be really good.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
these things
so-
are, what kind of wattage do they use? I mean, they must use quite a bit of
I never even looked at that. I do not know. But this is what they call the AMS unit. And this is, you put your 4 spools in here, and then each one of these will pull it'll actually feed the filament down in or pull it back out. And inside here, you have desiccant boxes to keep them dry. And there's actually a modification where you can put a humidity meter in here in case it gets too hot. But they also have dryers, and the enclosed box in here, I can put the filament inside there, put it on what they call dehydrate essentially, and it'll dry the filament out for you also.
own little oven.
But they also have dryers for the filament to keep them dry. Because what happens with PLA especially, and I think ABS is another one, because it absorbs the moisture, it gets really brittle and it makes it hard to print. This is one of the things I want to print as soon as I get my new printer. Not the stir fry, it's coming up.
And pretty soon you'll be able to do that, right? Print your own food.
Oh yeah, you actually can now.
Oh, cool.
This is called a fractal vise. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Back in the 20s or 30s, they're the most incredible thing, and a couple guys have come up with the same version that you can 3D print for it. And it just, the vise will clamp around pretty much any
Anything.
object. And something like this is really, really hard to manufacture, because between each one of these moving things is actually a dovetail. So you've got a dovetail on a circular surface, and but with a 3D print, do that. I'll jump to the end here.
So that guy's actually has the what do they call it, STL file?
Exactly, yeah, yeah, he's showing it here.
I've seen those. I've seen the real ones.
I want
They
one
are
so bad.
so cool.
Yeah, I really want one. I check eBay all the time. I haven't seen one recently. Actually, Adam Savage from Mythbusters just recently bought one from Alibaba. It was like 2,500 bucks.
Oh yeah.
If you look at his YouTube channel, he's got one, but it's just the coolest darn vise, I think. I'd love to put that on my milling machine. But I thought it'd be fun to 3D print one. And again, to be able to make one, to machine one would be a nightmare because there's no way you could get that dovetail on the curved surfaces.
You're just about done. Oh,
But to me, that's the great thing about 3D printing is that, you can design something, print it out, test it. If it doesn't work, tweak it, try it again. And, it helps me. And then I can actually take whatever I 3D print. I have aluminum casting that I play around with, and I can bring it down and sand cast my 3D model. And so then I can actually cast my model out of aluminum that way.
Oh really?
Yeah, I'm not doing the lost wax type casting. What I'll do is I'll just treat that as my model. I'll
Yeah.
put it in there and pack the sand around it and do it that way. With my cope and drag.
So what sort of I can't even remember, was it aluminum's like what, 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit?
1450, I think is what I melted at.
Which is less than gold and silver, right?
Yeah, and I use an old pottery kiln. I'd modified it with a controller so that I can set the temperature. And then I built a new top for it that has a hole I can drop a crucible down, which is nothing more than a big chunk of square tube that I've welded a base plate on it. And then I've got some tongs and it works out pretty good. It takes about an hour and a half to heat up because it's electric. I'm not using a gas forge, but it works well. And the nice thing about being electric is I actually don't get as much crap on the top of my aluminum because you get this dross on the top, especially with gas. But with electric, you don't get as much. So I actually get a lot of good pure aluminum.
How big a pour can you do, Mike?
Not really big. I can probably do a couple pounds.
Oh wow.
Here I built.
But like with gold and silver, we use borax to get that frost, to get the impurities out. Is that?
This is something.
Oh,
I don't know if you can see it very well.
you can't use borax to get the
You can, yeah. And sometimes if I got a lot of dirty metal, I'll throw borax in. I'm not really good at all this, but I play with it. So what this is it kind of looks like coral.
The ant.
And what I did was there's some really cool YouTube videos on it. If you can buy these, I think they call them water beads. They look like little tiny hard marbles, and then you pour put them in a 5-gallon bucket and fill it with water, and then these beads will absorb all the water, and they end up being about 3/8 of an inch diameter. And then what you do is you have this 5-gallon bucket full of these beads that have filled up with water, and then you heat up your aluminum and you pour it in. And when you pour it in, it'll start dropping down, form all around the beads, and then solidify. And so you can make these really cool sculptures. I was scared to death to do it at first. I'm thinking, you know, I'm going to take 1400 degree liquid metal and I'm going to pour it in a water bath. And I was going, oh, this is going to end well. And I think my wife was standing by dialing 9-1 and just waiting for that third one. But it didn't explode or anything. The aluminum just went down in it, and then the steam was going everywhere, and it was kind
Just
of fun.
quench the aluminum. So the aluminum collected during into those beads, huh?
Yeah, no, yeah,
So
it just kind of forms around the outside of them.
So the beads are there. They're just covered with aluminum, basically.
Yeah, and then they as you know, because of the hot aluminum, they'll start shrinking and then they fall off, and then you've got beads all over your driveway, and it's a real mess. But
Oh. So why don't you do lost wax casting with if you printed your things with PLA? You could just burn the PLA out of an investment crucible.
That I want to try that someday, and they actually have some filaments that are for that, but it's quite a process. You know, you just don't stick it in the oven and let it roll out. What you do is you've got to go through. It's like an hour at 500 degrees, you know, and you've got all these different steps. And I'm just too lazy to do it.
Okay, well, we did like plastic toys to make like silver, like little dump trucks and stuff. You know, they were only like. So we do use the plastic and just burn them out. It smelled terrible for a while, and you had to make sure you had a place to exhaust poisonous gas. But I know Linda's shaking her head there but the plastic, I mean, it wasn't that much plastic really, and there is a process to it. I don't remember the formula, but you have to bring it up slowly, and then and you have to have your investment hot too to start with.
Yes.
To get it, and you got a vacuum. You need a vacuum machine too. But
Right.
At the track crash a couple years ago, they had a full size investment machine and a vacuum. It was like a $5,000 vacuum pump with the domes and everything were there, and I was like, oh man, but it was so heavy and so huge. I would have loved to actually have one, but I mean, back in the day when I was doing jewelry work, we always used those really. Actually, the ideal one were dental investment vacuums and stuff like that, and you need a centrifuge to spin it, that all kind of stuff. But it could all be done.
For
Especially when you
rings,
got old. What?
for rings and jewelry, they do use PLA a lot, and they'll they'll create the ring, and then they'll just stick it in a real small little sand cast, and cram it all down, pop it open, and then pour it in, with silver or gold, and yeah, you can do that really relatively easy with any of the 3D printed parts.
Yeah, my wedding ring is lost wax.
Okay.
Yeah, they formed it, poured it.
Tens of thousands of years there of what jewelers used to do. So I mean, that's what they did, is lost wax casting and that kind of stuff. And I guess sand casting was probably even older, right? Like the bronze stuff that they did.
Oh yeah.
So it's probably even older than lost wax, I would think. But that's basically what jewelry, 3D printing came along. Now you can print out your perfect wax mold. I mean, before we had to what we did is we used silicone to actually to mimic whatever ring they wanted, and we could always do that and then adjust the wax by adding and cutting a wax off of it.
Well, and that's actually exactly how they do it. So one of the best ways to do it is you 3D print the fancy ring you want, maybe with a skull on it or something like that. And then you pour that, you do your silicon mold around it. Now that you got your silicon mold, now you can use wax, build the lost wax inside that silicon mold, and you can just keep repeating them.
So the art is in the computer programming computer programming there you go, is computer programming the 3D printing instead of actually carving the wax like they've done for thousands. So kind of interesting.
It's pretty cool. That's kind of the great thing about 3D printing is there's so many different ways that you can use that. I've made parts that way that I wanted out of aluminum to where They didn't always turn out perfect because I'm not good at it, but you know, I'll 3D print something that I want. I'll go down and you know, use my cope and drag and sand cast it, and then I'll pour it, and then I've got, you know, a nice rough shape that I can run it through my mill and lathe to get to where I want.
The amazing thing too is that shrinkage was a big problem, you know, because every time you do that, you have shrinkage in different ways when you
Yep.
convert it from a thing. So now you could adjust that just by a click of a mouse, and you'd actually have the shrinkage part. I mean, that was a lot of our problems. You would get a beautiful wax casting, and then by the time you got it done, it wasn't quite the same size, you know. So because of shrinkage, because you're going from into silicone, and then I mean, you're using molds and then going
Right.
back and forth, and try to, when you do the waxes, of course the artisan would work on the wax to make it larger than it actually needed to be. But with the 3D printing, I mean, there's no need for that thing. You just do that with a click of a mouse. I want this much shrinkage.
Exactly. You just add that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the numbers are already pre-known, so you just scale it to that amount.
Yeah, they're making, you know, like for in the medical devices, you know, like they were having difficulty with doing surgery on babies because all of the medical equipment was so large. And now that they can 3D print a sturdy enough plastic that the surgeon can use it to you know, to do whatever, and they can make models. They can make silicone pieces. People have been so badly burned they've lost features on their faces. You know, they can model ears, they can do noses, they can do lips, you know, and stuff like that to give people back, you know, what they've lost. So yeah, I've been watching some of the. Well, I'm most fascinated by how they're going to get the machine to the moon to build Quonset huts on the moon to protect the or Mars, huh?
Right. Well, if in buildings, so I mean, with that kind of thing, where they actually use a 3D printer to actually lay the concrete, you know, layers of concrete around.
Well, they're going to use what they're going to use is the dust, the moon dust.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
they're you know, they're going to figure out how to come or bind the moon dust into. But you know, I was watching them build. They had a 3D or a fast. I get the word. The words aren't coming to me. Where they actually showed in stop action how they built a house, a concrete house with a machine.
Oh yeah, it's really cool.
I just played that last when we did the 3D printing thing here, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, I went and looked at more of them. that piqued my interest. So
I think the problem would be getting water there, right? I mean, because you would need some kind of, have to produce some kind of water.
Yep, that'll be a problem. Well, not yes and no. I think they say there's water there.
There is water ice on the moon.
Problem is it's frozen.
No, they found water on the moon.
I know, but it's frozen.
Yeah, but you know, all you got to do is if you figure out how to make the machine, they'll probably be able to figure out how to melt it.
Thanks, David. Appreciate your help, David. Well, maybe they could use astronaut urine or something.
Yeah.
They already drink it, for crying out loud.
The Martian filtered urine.
Yeah. Hey, you know, if you can figure out how to make distilled water, you make distilled
Do you know if they have
water.
Go ahead.
Yeah, distilled water has no flavor. I mean, it's just water's water, you know, and you just bring the molecules back and take all the waste out of it, and you've got.
Do you know if they can actually the sprues for lost cast waxing? I mean, I guess they would be able to figure that out. How much volume is in each thing? That was one of the artistry with casting, is to be able to put the sprues in the right places, because you know, if you don't do that, of course the liquid metal doesn't flow correctly. So a lot of that thing was from experience to learn how to do that. And I learned from an old guy that used to cast a lot, and he would tell certain things about, you know, it was more of a guesswork though. It was like, okay, it's going to go in this way. your centrifuge is moving to the, one side or not.
Right.
So that kind of
You may
thing.
need
And the
have
idea of
vents
that is, what's that?
and you may need vents in places and.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of thing. And that was one of the things too, because when you cast rings, you cast on a sprue tree, and you just hook all your things to it like that, because you want to cast 10 or 12 rings at a time. If you're going
Sure.
to all that trouble.
So the
And,
cool thing with the 3D printing is they're actually because I've seen a couple on the jewelry. You should go take a look. It's amazing. They'll actually print with the sprue trees already built, and so all you got to do is just cast the whole thing in one shot.
Yeah.
No
You
more
cast-
guess.
You said PLA that's actually made like out of wax, so they actually melt
Yeah,
away
yeah.
just like a.
Yeah, they have
Pretty
a
interesting.
casting filament.
So digital photography actually ruined all the studies I did for photography, right? How to learn how to black and white. Now 3D printers is going to ruin all I learned from being a jeweler.
Yeah.
So, and then robots destroyed being a meat cutter. So no, appliance repairman can, if the machines can start fixing themselves, then I'm going to lose all that knowledge I had from being an appliance repairman. So it's like all my good thing I don't have to work now, right? So that's kind of the thing. So.
Learn how to make 3D printers.
It's definitely a new world. I like to think of it a little differently, kind of like with the jewelry. Take 3D printing and apply it to jewelry to where you can do even more and even better. And
Yeah.
that's the key.
Well, that's like digital photography now. I mean, it was so hard to do it before. I mean, it took so much practice, so much learning, so much mixing chemicals and making sure everything was right and all that process. And now everything is just easy. It's just crazy. I mean, you don't need, the only artisan part of it is still, they still are very, you have to be a good artisan to figure out. You have to have a good eye, is what we used to call it.
Actually, you don't anymore with the AI stuff. They're creating.
Everything.
Yeah,
So
I don't
that's
know
what
if
you
you've seen
should
it, all the people that they're creating. You can create brand new people out of thin air. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. So Linda, teach your grandchildren, learn AI. Learn how to program an AI so that they can do all these things. That's the wave of the future. And then they'll do everything. So, but you still need somebody to program. To do the programming or tell the AI exactly what to do, because it
Have
gets
you
so
ever
complicated.
Have you ever watched the movie Wall-E? Wall-E, the cartoon? The cartoon movie?
Yeah.
Look at what happened to people when they don't have to do anything, when
they
they're
still live.
catered to.
Yeah.
They got
Terminator's another one.
they got
there you
really,
go.
really fat. So, watch out what you wish for.
Well, AI is coming, it's going to happen. The thing that I'm thinking about is they're going to be the future, because it could do anything. Basically, and if you're able to tell it what to do, but that's the problem, is you got to be able to tell it what to do, because there's so many possibilities, right? So
I'm using ChatGPT all the time. I love it. It's helping me so much. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and it's just going to get better. That's the thing. So pretty interesting.
Well, I think of it this way. My grandmother was born in the late 1800s, and she went from riding a horse and buggy to watching the first man on the moon in her lifetime. And in my lifetime, I've gone from watching the man in the moon to flying cars. They just approved the first flying car.
I figure that AI is going to be even more
and Dick Tracy's watch.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
So yeah, that was what everybody wanted was the Dick Tracy watch, where you had somebody's face on it, where you could two-way talk, and the whole cell phone. Yeah.
Well, Linda, right here.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I've got. This one sends my heart rate to my doctor.
Yeah,
You know, it's got a health monitor in it and
it'd be your sugar level. That's what the next one that's coming out. I hope that's the whole deal. They'll show your glucose. Well, actually, well, right now it
the
it knows my
diabetics have one. They have a they
Yeah.
have a watch for diabetics, yeah. Oh, you've got the, yeah.
But so it talks to my watch and talks to my phone. So, and then that
Yeah.
goes automatic. So it does right now, but I just eventually they'll have it that'll actually just be able to tell everything. So, be like
Yeah,
Star Wars.
I want a
Tricorder.
tricorder from Star Trek.
You that'll be the thing. Your phone will be your tricorder. Just carry it with you, and it'll tell everything you need to know.
Yep.
So
It'll be a tricorder.
in the last newsletter, you know, they asked me to write up for something for myself. I actually that was all written by Chat GPT, because I had it write it for me.
Yeah. So I think I've been eating my dinner here, but you know, on the AI thing. So if they decide to teach it to lie about certain things or bias a certain way, what are you gonna have then? But the one thing is they don't realize is I don't think they may not have the chips to do all this stuff because making the real high-end chips, it takes materials from all over the world, different countries and stuff. So any slight little interruption in the chain, and that may just kind of put a stop to that for a while anyway, because they may not have the high-end chips to do that.
A Tesla Dojo chip computer has 50 billion transistors in it. Actually, it's kind of crazy. And Mark, it already does lie. It will find out things, and they've been testing it where they've actually checked some of the things that it's done, and it makes up. It made up studies that never existed. They took names from different, put it in thing, and it's like this thing is actually. So they've actually taught it to lie already. So and it could do art. They were thinking it couldn't do art because that's all kind of subjective too, right? So a human eye kind of thing, and it could do beautiful art. Just so I don't know what can it do, Mike or Mark?
They haven't built in Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, so we're sunk.
That's right.
Well, that's what Elon Musk and those other guys were talking about, that they need to put some rules in place because
I saw some interview where he's talking about one of the big people doing that really doesn't care about that stuff. So we're screwed.
Yeah, that's because and he made it a for profit.
Right? That's right.
It wasn't for. So I think what he said is that we're already sunk. There's nothing, you can't stop it now. But.
Well, the thing is, I mean, if say the United States put laws and rules in, it's not going to stop everyone else from doing it, you know.
Exactly.
And
well, everybody, but I know everybody worry about China, but China's about ready to collapse. And China has never made the medium chips without Western assistance. They do not know how to run the equipment. They could take over Taiwan, which makes high-end chips, but without Western help, they can't run the factories. I mean, if they kill off the Taiwanese or whatever, the equipment's worthless to them because they don't have the high-end knowledge to run the processes and the machines.
Mark, they don't kill them; they just make them slaves. So,
well, if they can get them to work for them, but.
And then once you get AI to actually do the work, right? They have robots and stuff to do the work. Loop already has done some crazy stuff that they can program a robot arm to do. It's just so complex. I mean, it's just, and you don't have to worry about fatigue. You don't have to worry about carpal tunnel, anything like that. It can do all kinds. There you go.
They're going to put OSHA out of business.
OSHA. I mean, and it can do. I mean, those arms can do incredibly. They're incredibly articulate, and then they, tons and stuff, and they can also do incredibly
complex.
Complex or delicate stuff too. Loop programmers are just, and that ABB, they're the one that are manufacturing the robots themselves. So they're doing all kinds of different arms. I mean, and you figure So they're building their own robots with their own arms, right? Over again, it's kind of replication, just like Terminator, right? That was the whole idea.
The Boston Dynamics stuff, boy, that if anything wants to, if you really want to be scared, just watch those
Oh, that one, yeah.
Dynamics.
The
What?
dogs, it really
Yeah.
scared me. All that dogs, because one dog opens the door and he looks around to monitor of him, lets the other dogs in. It's like, and they move like a, like a SEAL team. I mean, they were ready
Yeah.
to do all kinds of stuff, and then it was pretty crazy. So I mean, that was a while back. I can imagine what they do now. I mean, that they don't show us. It must be incredible.
Well,
The one
they put,
Nope.
they put spy objects into minute things like it's the size of ants. And and we're so used to seeing, the flies, ants, insects, they're ubiquitous, they're everywhere. And all you have to do is make one look like a real insect and just infect any building and you get all kinds of spy information. So yeah, we're I'm glad I'm the age I am. I may not see the world. I'm not going to see the world go down in flames.
entertaining though, right? Like watching a movie. Watch flames, watch everything fall apart. Wow.
I'm just going to be happy, live my life, enjoy things as they come along, and maybe an AI will teach me how to dance.
For right, teaching you everything, YouTube, right?
Yeah.
I just put a link in the chat. If you get a chance, watch this. I would love to make one of these. What a guy did was he took basically a microcontroller, Arduino microcontroller, an old TV, and a Amazon voice assistant, and made his own little robot. And it's really cool. It's just kind of hacked together. It's really friggin' incredible.
Guy to be that creative, right? To take things that tell them they have a limited budget, and this is what we want to make, and I use these old technology to make new technology out of it, right?
Yeah.
I don't see, right? But you need a program that's creative enough to come up with the ideas to actually tell it what to do, right? Or I guess you could just tell it what you want, actually, right? I mean, that's how it actually works. But you have to know exactly what you want. That's the whole key to everything, I think.
Okay, here I'll display it real quick.
Yeah, let's watch it. I'll put you on. Oh wow, there you go.
Oh.
Where do you get the eyes from?
Amazon.
Freedom.
I want to see beams glitter in the garden in Tonhouse again. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to introduce you to my new friend, Lexatron. This is by far the most complicated build I've done to date. I've spent the last 3 days, like 15 hours a day, just troubleshooting this construction. Not to mention all the sourcing parts and all the previous component builds and all that. And, it's a bit buggy. It's, but there is something unique about this particular creature. The house.
Let's see if I can find where he's.
Right here on your right.
So yeah, what he did was these are all just 3D files that he printed, and then with servo motors, and he actually goes through how he put the whole thing together. 3D printing it. I think here's the servo motors, and he just printed these. He worked a while on getting the eyeballs looking good.
Oh, so he actually did make them. Yeah, I was wondering where the eyeballs did.
Yeah, he made them all, and then this was his early version of the eyeball.
Guys.
Can you put it to full screen, Mike? Hit that, that yeah, there you go.
Sure.
There we go.
The servos, as you can hear, are still pretty jittery. I think that's because.
But this is just a Arduino here. This is a little tiny joystick controller.
Oh, wow.
This is limited.
That's his Arduino. Is that a Raspberry?
Sensors out of California. You can get this on the Spark Fund website. I'll leave a link down below. This is a self-contained face tracking camera unit. I mean, if you were really ambitious and had lots of free time, you could of course program your own face track. It will not just be read and then give her a command.
Let's see.
Second wire as a ground reference.
Here's where he's making the eyeballs.
Oh, it makes them more real. Yeah.
That would be something great to have at your repair clinic, there, Mike.
Fascinating.
Okay, no problem.
So oh,
Lived on this magic box.
And here's, he just bought an old television, and he went into the vertical so he could get a line to go across it. And he tied that to the voice input.
Got too much time in his hands.
So does it show at the end the exact how it's working?
Yeah, you'll show it here in a second.
Yeah, that's really. How long did it take him to make it?
That's a good question. I don't know.
He said 16-hour days.
That was for
15 hours.
debugging.
15-hour days.
For debugging.
CRT, okay.
Yeah. Zap.
With a power switch. This is our Arduino Mega. Used to be a nice small Arduino Nano, but I burned that out, putting too many volts to it. So this is all I had left. So I put a Mega in there. This is the servo board that drives all of these servos. So it's been a long journey, but I think we're ready to finally test this thing. Computer.
Ooh.
Computer, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes! Computer, what was your special order?
You saw it. I thought it was clear. Bring back life form, priority 1. All other priorities rescind.
Computer, are you alive?
Artificially, maybe, but not in the same way that you're alive.
Computer, have you seen anything interesting in your life?
Alexa.
Things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire at the shoulder of Orion. I watched see.
So anyway, yeah, that's it. I thought that was a pretty cool build.
Yeah. And he gave it an English accent.
And that's all, I think, just the voice assistant answering his questions. But I might want to build one of these eye things because that just looked really cool.
Yeah.
But once you have a 3D printer, you can just start printing lots of crap.
Yeah, you're on mute, Franklin.
I was gonna say, yeah, the dot is the one that all that stuff is readily available. It will be, and the TV would be easy to get. I think the hardest part is the eyes.
Yeah, and he just 3D printed them.
And you could, are the files open source?
Yeah.
So he did mold them. He actually molded the pupils though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That would take a little more work. So, and then
But you
debug
could,
getting the adrenaline to see, that was controlling the eyes, right, with the face tracker. So pretty cool. Yeah, that should be doable. Really, pretty,
Yeah,
pretty.
the iModule is on Thingiverse for free. You just go there, download it, and you print the parts out and mount up the servo motors, and you're ready to go.
yeah, they've got some, they've already got, in Japan, they've got a lot of these female robots that are front desk, at the hotels. And they can handle almost anything,
Yeah.
that
They're gonna, because they're not quite human, but they look humanoid. So that's the. I think they have a name for that, where it looks human but not quite human.
yeah, but it's supposed to be, people, they've made it so that people can relate to them. They have and they're teaching autistic children by using these robots. They have, they're friendly and non-threatening and easy for the kids to relate to. So they're teaching them how to relate. So yeah, it's fascinating. What I've seen in my lifetime, I think it's absolutely fascinating.
It really is, and I've seen it where they're using it for medical now too, because they can, there's such a shortage of healthcare workers, that you can use something like that to do a lot of the basic stuff.
Right. Bring meals, a robotic orderly would be nice. Someone rings the bell for the nurse and all they need to do is go to the bathroom, need some help to go to the bathroom,
Right.
have a nice heavy duty, strong robot that can, pick you up and
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got robot vacuums all over the house. I even got one up here at the beach, just push the button and it goes and vacuums for me, so I don't have to do it.
yeah, we're gonna have to get a hold of one of those. My daughter's moving in with a husky.
Oh yeah, hair. The only problem is you have to clean the hair out of the Roombas.
Yes, and at home we had a cat, so we got the Roomba. I think it's the J9, which does poop detection, which is really, really, really important if you have animals. Really important. Trust me.
Yeah. We
really important.
The dog is old enough that she knows better, but yeah, when they get older and they have some medical issues, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
We had an old cat, and we just put her down just recently, but we had her up here at the beach, and I was using the Roomba, and she was sitting on my lap next to me, and I went on my phone and I turned the Roomba on, and it started cleaning and she it, and it went over near her litter box where I didn't realize she'd missed, and it spread it everywhere. I spent 2 days with the mop, and I had brown streaks all over. It was horrible.
So I know what you did. You bought the new poop detection model.
That's exactly what I did. I said, okay. And the nice thing, it does cord detection and stuff too, so it won't get caught in your cords and things. Yeah. And then it goes back into its home and then sucks itself out, so you don't even have to dump it, which is great.
Yeah.
You'll have to clean out where it gets caught around the wheels and around the brushes, right? Yeah. So that's a bummer. So, and that's about everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we've got mostly hardwood floors all through the house, so that would probably work really well.
Yeah, but you still have to clean it out. You'll just still have to, even the automatic dumping ones, because it just, I mean, they can't getting caught around the brushes and the wheels and stuff like that.
It does an amazing job of picking up the hair and getting it caught in everything.
Yeah, so, robotic devices aren't still perfect.
Well, I gotta tell you, the nice thing is, it really does, it doesn't necessarily clean as well as a vacuum, but because it's happening all the time, I mean, I have it running at home where it cleans our kitchen every day at 9 o'clock. And it does the living room 3 times a week and the family room 3 times a week. And so, it's always cleaning, which really does do a good job. And the great thing is it just takes care of it, so much better than we did before. If you vacuum once a week, this thing's doing it, every day, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But definitely get the poop detection.
Yeah. You got a cat. Well, actually, our
Trust me.
dog.
Trust me, get the poop detection. Yeah. Oh, that was horrible. Oh my God, that was horrible.
Yeah, 'cause you have to clean the machine too.
We don't
Oh,
wanna-
yeah. Yeah, I had it outside. I had to dismantle the whole thing. It took me probably 3 hours. I was going, oh God, oh no. Big yellow gloves on.
No, yeah. And, improve your immune system.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cool is the new ones now also, they map the room for you. So when you start, you just say map and it drives around and figures out all your rooms. And then after that, you can just specify any room you want to clean.
Yeah, well, I've got hardwood floors, the great room, which is living room, dining room, kitchen, all one great big room. So, mapping that would make it easy. I'll let it go at night when I'm sleeping. Then down the hallway. Does it make a lot of noise?
No, it's actually pretty quiet. I don't know if you can see the map or not. Probably not.
No, it's too. Oh, there you go. Oh, I see. Okay. So it knows where everything is.
Yeah, and then you put in like room dividers and things like that and blockage areas and you can specify all those kind of things. And when you say, go clean the dining room, it just drives right over there, cleans it and goes back.
Yeah, well, we'll figure everything out once the dog gets here. I got 3 weeks.
I highly recommend the Roomba over any of the other brands because I've worked on a bunch of different ones during my repair clinic work, and the Roombas are put together so incredibly well. The engineering is awesome. Everything is modular. It's like one screw, you pop it out and you've got a wheel off, and 3 screws and the whole back plate comes off. It's just really easy to take apart and clean and work on.
It won't wash my dishes and it won't clean my stove.
No, those are different things you have to buy.
Yeah.
And it won't clean the bathroom, so I have a maid service do that.
Exactly.
But yeah, they only come every 2 weeks. So yeah, I would need floor cleaning in between. They just vacuum everything up, right? They don't actually clean the floor.
Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
I was gonna say there's a brush that spins around that gets the edges, that clicks out all the edges, and then you got a beater brush that goes around. And so it actually more than just vacuum, it actually beats the floor like your upright vacuum would work.
Yeah.
And the problem is they do wear out. Those parts do wear out. The edge one is like it throws everything in there. It picks up everything. I mean, the only thing is like
picking everything up, but cleaning, like if I've spilled food on the floor
or
or that kind of thing, it won't clean that.
That's
like
kind of like where the poop detection comes in.
Anyway.
You still have to clean up like a food or something. But see, that's there you go. That's
yeah. That's a little vacuum brush.
So it's basically all your vacuum things. It's it doesn't have anything wet, that kind of thing. They do have mopping ones though, right? I've never used one, but they do have ones that mop your floors too. But I mean, like since you have hardwood floors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna let the maids do that.
They have a Roomba mop too. It works okay-ish.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I found one in the estate sale for $50, so I picked one up.
But life is interesting.
Yep.
Very cute.
So
What hat is that? You want me to show him? Okay, get a show. Show her new hat. You gotta come over further. Further down, lower. There's her new hat. I don't know if you can see it.
oh, your background is messing up there.
Yeah, let me take it off.
She's blending in with the background.
Okay, there you go.
Oh,
She got a new hat.
Awesome.
ain't she cute?
I think it's backwards though. The bow should be in the front. No, maybe not. I don't know. Cool. Okay.
Anyway,
Enough
I'm
showing.
gonna jump off. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Mike. It was great. Oh, fantastic. I like the
Yep.
quiz. We don't have to do more quizzes. It was fun.
Okay, I'll try to come up with something.
as long as you don't ask me to answer the questions, I'll be fine.
You can always cheat and just answer. We'll do.
Yeah. No. No more tests. I'm through with that. I'm too old for
Like
tests.
that.
Anyway,
We had a great discussion and there was a lot of really good comments. So I think that's great. Thanks
yeah.
for your help, Mark.
Even though I don't understand 99% of it, I got a little bit out of it. So it was
Okay.
fun. Okay, have a nice evening.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.
How you been, Mark?
I've been doing good. But yourself?
Did your husband come back
Saturday.
Saturday? Oh, okay. So
They're,
you
they're
been
ready. They're ready. He
they're ready.
see. Yesterday morning, I think it was. Would have been Monday night for us. They're getting ready to take off to get to their flight. And he was closing the curtain or something in there, and there was a glass shard on the floor, and it went through his heel of his shoe.
Oh
And
my gosh.
This is in a 5-star hotel. Or 4 or 5. It's nice. It's a nice hotel. I mean, it's not, it's not extravagant, but it's got a nice rating anyway. But
Wow,
so
that's
they
huge.
got
That
the med kit there for him, and they called a cab and took him to the airport. And I don't know. Maybe they adjusted the price in the room or two, but I don't know what the deal was. I mean, it was a piece of good sized piece of glass that got missed by the maid service, I guess. And, but they're just having their last days back in Stockholm, and see, Margaret, my next door neighbor, her older sister, it was her apartment. She went into a assisted type of care home up by her other sister.